Have you ever had a class that just won't stop talking? No matter how solid your classroom management is or how many mindfulness activities you try, they just keep chatting away? We've been there. In this episode, we're going to chat about the chatty class and share some strategies that have worked for us to tame the talk. Let's dive into the well.
Welcome to the Edgewell Podcast, a show created for, by, and with teachers. I'm Alex.
And I'm Chelsea. With over 30 years of combined teaching experience, our goal is to share insights and connect with fellow educators on how to thrive both personally and professionally.
Join us as we dive deep into the well of information, filled with meaningful discussions, practical tips, and ideas that go way beyond the classroom walls. Let's be well
and do well together.
Well, isn't this ironic that we're going to be having a talk about the amount of talking in our classroom?
It really is. So before we start the talk about the classes, let's have ourselves a little chat, shall we?
Always. We always have a chat.
It's February.
It's February and it's cold. The world is an interesting place right now. Yeah. And we're watching that all unfold and wow.
Does that affect your well?
I'm going to be honest. Yes, it does. I'm a very proud Canadian and I'm watching some things that are going on around us and, incredibly problematic, but also a reminder of just how proud I am to be a Canadian, Chelsea. But yeah, it has impacted my well, but it has also impacted my resolve.
That's good. So you've got those hard walls on your well today then, right? You're building them up.
Reinforced. They're brick. The well is deep, no little waves or big waves are going to break the well.
I love that.
So thank you for asking me about my well. And I want to know how you're doing. Have you been impacted by anything lately? Or, are you ready for a weekend right now? Looking forward to some downtime?
I am so ready for this long weekend that we have just started. I was looking forward to it, throughout this week. This week got a little bit long for me. Actually, the past few weeks, because we have just finished report cards. We've finished parent-teacher conferences. There have been winter activities. There have been all kinds of things happening over the last 3 weeks, and a lot of things also going on in my personal life where I'm quite busy each night. So I'm finding that my well is being drained very quickly, but then I fill it back up. And then it's drained immediately, and then I fill it back up. So it's kind of like it's being pumped out really, really fast right now. So I'm sort of running on the hamster wheel. And that's why I'm looking forward to the next 3 days where I know that I am going to have some rest built into this weekend. And if I don't build that rest time in, I'm going to actually hit that well wall, and that's not going to be good for me. But I am aware of that. That could come for me. I'm not going to let it happen.
No, don't let it happen. And as you were explaining that, I'm really visualizing the well going empty. If you were to have a weekend where, everything hit the fan and fell apart, your well would go completely dry and not get the replenish. You are always at risk of that happening because there are things that happen in life that you cannot control. So you can't skip a weekend. If you have a weekend where you are able to replenish, you've got to take that opportunity and do it because you have to be ready for that weekend where everybody else has to come first because something has gone wrong, right?
Correct. And I think that, again, there's not really any way to overly prepare for those types of times in our lives, but building in all of these habits and, just doing everything that we talk about on this podcast to be well and do well has absolutely helped me over the last few weeks that have been a little bit overwhelming and very busy. So I'm actually kind of proud of the work that I've done with that. And I think that's why I can keep managing to fill up my well. And if something does happen where it gets totally drained, I know that I have strategies in place where I will be able to fill it back up again. So that is comforting.
Yeah, it's being very deliberate and being very mindful. And you mentioned the podcast just a second ago. You and I typically, once, it's out there, listening is something that we may not do because, we just That's a hard thing to do, to listen to yourself talk. But I happen to have listened to our last episode, Teaching in Your 30s, part of the Generation series. And I have to tell you that I had like so much self regret, because there were so many things I thought, oh my goodness, I should have talked about this. We should have talked about that. We should have made this point or that point. And that is such a wide topic. So I almost want to throw it to our listeners like a, I know that 20 to 30 minutes cannot encapsulate an entire decade of your career. And there's so many more pieces of information. So, Chelsea, I just want to say it so that we make it happen at some point. We need to dig deeper on that at a later date and explore more deeply the different things that we can be doing during different generations to improve upon how well we are at work and how effective we are, but how we're putting things in place in our life that are preparing for the future. I feel like I don't know, I feel like I missed stuff, and it's upsetting me right now.
Okay, well, I hope you are taking some notes on that, because we are going to need to remember that to include into the continuation of the Teaching in Your 30s episode, or the whole generation series, because you're right. There's a lot to say about an entire decade. So, great point. And I am totally on board for extending that topic. Now, you're talking about how we didn't talk enough. And our episode today is about how there can often be too much talking in our classrooms. So let's dive into how we can try to tame that talk and hopefully throw out some strategies to teachers out there who may be having that year where you've got that high energy, really talkative class. Right now, the Rolodex in my mind is just spinning, and you can really remember those years where a lot of your energy was drained.
Well, actually, back to your reference about, the well being drained and then filling back up. Those years where you have a class where there's still talk, but the talk is tameable, those are the years where your well really gets drained. You, as a teacher, have a level of um, risk of burnout, risk of higher stress, risk of your nervous system feeling overloaded and overwhelmed when you have a year of high chat. But when it's followed by another year of high chat, you're not getting that respite. So that's something to think about and be mindful of. Yeah.
Exactly. So before we jump into our strategies and advice, let's just define a little bit what the chatty class looks and sounds like. So I'm going to throw out there students that are often gathering in the halls and chatting and having their conversations and not really finishing them up on time.
I'm going to add that often students will be very excitable and the tone of the voice will go up much higher. And then the other student will increase the tone of their voice. And then there's kind of like sometimes full cacophony of squeal and laughter and joy noise, which I do appreciate because I love joy, but it could hurt my ears.
Yes, I know exactly what you're saying. There's also the constant chatter during any or all transitions.
This is accurate. There's the chatter across the room whereby students feel like they're in football fields and have to increase the volume of their voice much louder.
Yes. There's the trying to take your class to another area of the school, but there's a lot of chatter going on all the way down the halls, no matter what you've done.
Yes, and then there's the whether it's true or perceived judgment from everybody else, perhaps maybe thinking, why can't you get your class in order?
Well, that's the thing. You see, you can get a high energy group, and it can make you feel like you're not doing well with your classroom management. I've felt like that, a lot in my career, and I had to give myself some pep talks and even talk to other people where we can get that feedback from other teachers. And so it is comforting when you talk to another teacher and they say, "Oh, yeah, they don't stop talking in my class either. It's not you. It's not you, it's them."
Yeah, that's very affirming. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so there are ways to tame the talk without shutting it down. We don't want to shut it down. It could be a great thing. So let's get into the strategies and advice that we have brought to this discussion. I don't know what you're going to say, Alex, and you don't know what I'm going to say, but my guess is that we're going to have some similar pieces of advice to build on. So let's get started. You want me to go?
Yes, I do. I want you to start.
All right. The first thing I would suggest is to view this situation as a challenge. It's easy to go home and complain about it, but I think that over the years, I've learned to really say, okay, I have a high energy group. How am I going to work with this? And after that, determine what type of challenge you are facing. I say this because there are different types of chatter. There are conversations that happen between students that could be friendly conversations. There could be also a lot of banter, which I think happens in the age group that we teach. But there could also be a lot of bickering, which is something that I think kids need to learn to keep, at a minimum because it can really go overboard. So try to figure out what there is more or less of, and then decide how to move forward with that. Because if there are more friendly conversations, then we can take that and roll with it. However, if there is too much bickering, we can start by addressing those conversations and improving them. And you have to pinpoint some areas, like you would on a little map, of what to really focus on.
One thing you said was view it as a challenge, but then you deconstructed the challenge. And I like that. There's different types of talk, and then identifying. Essentially, you can put it in the positive or the negative category, right? The positive
Yes.
category, where you said friendly and banter and conversation, those move the classroom forward. Those build community. So then, mindset wise, you're looking at that in a positive way. You really want more of that. It becomes problematic when it's the fighting or the bickering or the chirping, right? And so to me, your answer was about really viewing it as a challenge, and it's about mindset. So I've got an idea and I'm going to bring it forward because I also feel mine is about mindset, and they're kind of connected. As a teacher, think back to the moments that you've had with your classes where the students don't chat. They side eye. You do a lesson, you ask a question, you give them everything you have. You give them the opportunity to talk or to ask questions or to respond, and you get ice. Now, whether that's because there's something toxic in the room or you just have introverted students who really don't want to participate, whatever the reason may be. I have had those situations, and from time to time, I still have those situations. I would trade the loud, connected conversation any day for the class that is non-responsive, because it is so lonely being the teacher standing in front of that room, and you do not ever get the feeling that you are having impact, or you have to wait until maybe there is something written. So that to me is like this, that is the opposite of what we're talking about. And remembering that if you have chat and you have engaging moments, you've got great potential in the space to curate the conversations and kind of mold them and teach really good skills of conversation, because there's a willingness and a vulnerability that students are showing to speak their minds. And so it's flip your mindset a little bit. When you're getting home every day frustrated, I get it, because that is something that I have a hard time with. It physically affects me, a lot of noise. But to remember that the opposite of that is really, really hard on your state as a teacher. Does that make sense? So I guess my tip, because I threw my tip in there, is to also have a level of gratitude for the willingness of the students to converse, and remember how hard the opposite is. You can work with this. You just have to find the edge, find the way, mold it, and it's a teaching opportunity.
Yes, I agree with you. And I think, that it's a whole other episode too on where you have the class that is non-responsive. And we could probably talk about strategies to do with that. So again, we've got another episode born there. But I do want to add that when I say view it as a challenge, and we talk about the fact that we can work with this, I'm not talking about a situation that is unreasonable, because I know there are so many teachers out there right now who are in unreasonable situations. I don't think a class of 35 students, 40 students is reasonable. So that is a different challenge in itself.
I agree. Like, we are talking about in reasonable spaces and reasonable conversations. And there are some things that people experience that, like you said, are very unreasonable. Yeah, we have to acknowledge that. We're speaking within reason here. We're reasonable people, Chelsea. If we made the
Yes,
rules, I
yes,
think they'd
that's
be
right.
different. I think the classes would be smaller.
Oh,
I think
that's
there
for
would be
sure.
more I think there'd be more support. I think there'd be a whole bunch of different things that would happen. But yeah, okay.
Yeah. Okay. So after we have observed the chatter and determined what kind of chatter we are working with, we can help our students then understand the give and take of the situation. This, to me, in a classroom is so important. It's always a give and take when facilitating a group of people. But I'm talking specifically about the communication piece of the classroom. So it's about realizing that this group needs talk time. They absolutely need that talk time. They have to get that energy out. So, for example, that could be elbow partners, that could be group work, that could be time to chat. But more importantly, if we want this to work, we need to help students understand what exactly give and take means. I will always remind my chatty classes that they have had their time, but now it is my time. And I know that seems obvious, but it is extremely significant because it helps the students understand sharing and compromise and the importance of listening. It's about respect. And I actually find that kids are very receptive to this, but it's always giving them that explanation of why we're doing that. I think it's so important. I will say again, though, that I will remind the class that we are using a give and take strategy here. So you had 10 minutes to talk about the subject, and now it's time to listen to whatever it is I may be teaching.
I love that one. I'm going to add one little piece onto it because it was similar to one that I had, but yours was way better. So I'm just going to add a little add on to that. For your super, super, super chatty kids, you could also provide them with an opportunity to go and have a conversation amongst themselves to get it out. And you could really, like you were kind of saying, the give and take, lay it out and let them know. I've noticed that you really, really love talking, and I think that's fantastic. We're moving into a quieter time in the classroom. And so I want to give you the chance right now to get out the conversation that you clearly need to have and to just enjoy that. Take whatever insert amount of time, whatever you feel as a teacher is reasonable, and give them that and honor that. And, sometimes acknowledging another person's need and acknowledging that it might be different from what other people need or what you need, it shows this I see you moment. Like, I see what
Yes.
you need and I'm okay with that. And you build with that. And then moving forward, I'm just picturing that message goes home. Madame so and so knows that I really need to talk sometimes and allows me to A, B, C, D. And that helps me with my studies. That's a moment for you to learn about your student, but it's also a moment for a student to maybe learn whether or not that works for them. And so I think we have to provide that level of flexibility. Now, again, this isn't a reasonable class, right?
Yeah.
If you can make that happen, great. And if you cannot, then it's too aspirational. Do not do it.
Yeah, I do think it would be quite difficult to have, all of these talk times. Maybe if you are teaching a pretty rigid and structured curriculum where you don't have a lot of time.
All right. So my second point is going to be, I'm going to wrap this around a story. I feel like I have to editorialize myself here. Okay. So the other day we had an experience, Chelsea, where the students were incredibly chatty. and they were on the louder end of things, and they were active, and it was boisterous, but it was joyful, and it was really
Mhm.
quite sweet, and the kids liked each other and they were connected. I wouldn't say that we necessarily enjoyed the noise level, but I think both of us, to some degree, were on the same page, and we just kind of let it ride out, right? And we let it get loud and stay loud and be loud and go up and then go down. And it continued and it continued and oh, it continued. And then something shifted. It was almost like they got it out of their system. We let them have their moment and it ended. And I mean, that was an unstructured situation that we were in. But in a structured situation in a classroom, let's say after a lunch break, when everybody is in that high talk mode, and you give them that little bit of time sometimes, and then maybe you have your cues that you use, hopefully noise free, where they get to settlement. There's almost this compare and contrast high noise to nothingness, and they settle themselves without direction. And I love those moments. And we had that moment the other day. And it was just almost like between you and I, unspoken, that we were going to radically accept the fact that it was not the way that we wanted it and that they were really loud, but there was nothing going on that was going to hurt anyone, just our ears. And it simmered itself out. I don't know if it's the fact that we're showing trust to the students, that they're doing and getting what they need in that moment, and we're allowing it. It just gets out of their system. I don't know what it is, but I've had many a times in my career where I've just let it kind of happen and it does fizzle out. What are your thoughts on that?
I think that noticing that they are getting along and that this conversation or chatter or noise is a good thing before thinking about the fact that it's like, oh, these kids are loud, I better quiet them down, is bigger than that, you know? Take a second to realize that here you have a group of kids that maybe did not even know each other at the beginning of the year who are having a fantastic time and getting along. And then, you know what? Maybe give yourself some props for that because you probably contributed to that culture that you now have. And it's okay to step back and let that happen. You don't always have to be in like mega control of what's going on as long as, like you said, everyone's behaving and all is appropriate. That's a beautiful thing at school. I think that's a great sign of teacher and classroom success.
I think there's some teacher self regulation for me personally, because I have to self talk in those moments like, chill out, let it happen, let it be. And then, you think about it, the students are often, working through my agenda. I want them to work quietly in a moment. Well, maybe they don't feel like it. And I mean, you have to give to. I guess that's just the overarch. And for me, those moments that we had with those students, which was lovely, they were getting along. It took self-regulation for me because my instinct was to be like, okay, enough, over and over again. And that'll bring me to my other point after you share your number 3. I'm going to hold off because I don't want to, I'm going to end up saying it and then I'm not going to have a third point, Chelsea.
Okay, well, you were just talking about settling the students. And we do know that all classes need some settle time. So I'm going to bring up another obvious one that's just fantastic that I will always use for the rest of my career. And that is those bell ringers and those mindfulness times, because it makes such a huge difference when they come in from recess or when they come in from lunch. And I know we've touched on this before, but it's like, although we've embraced the chatter, we need those pockets of peace in our days. We do, so do the students. So I would encourage everyone to embrace the bell ringers. However, the add on here is that you've got a high energy class. So we can try using bell ringers that have little challenges in them. I find that this is really effective. This could be a math problem or a puzzle. Even if you're not teaching math, you could use it. I have. Reading still works for me, but I like to change it up. One that I find is really effective is the word search challenge. So You hand out a word search to everyone. They can't flip it over until the timer begins. And it's okay, how many people can find this many words in 6 minutes? And that is 6 minutes of beautiful peace where I can get my attendance done. I can pull up my lessons, and they're that much more engaged in that little bell ringer that I have. And it's settling them down for the lesson.
You brought up the importance of that 6-minute chunk of time for you to get your attendance done. I mean, it's not just the attendance, Chelsea. It's,
Yeah.
figuring out the conflict that happened at lunch. It's making sure that, everything is up correctly on the smart board, that you have everything that you need to be successful. There are millions of decisions and actions that you take to kind of get everything settled and ready. And so when you're able to weave those little moments into your day and for peace and quiet, do not be ashamed of needing moments of peace and quiet. Again, cubicle people, you are very lucky to have a lot of peace and quiet. Um, and make sure that you weave those moments in. That does contribute to you know, your peace and to your ability to focus for a few minutes. So I
Yeah,
like
those
those.
moments could be a lot longer than 6 minutes. Yes.
Oh, depending on the
A
grade,
lot longer.
yes. I always used personal reading to settle my class, and it was very successful, and it created a culture of conversation around books in the class. So that was great. Okay, that brings me to my next point, Chels, which is attached to the last one. And that is, I've brought this up before several times in the podcast. You can remember, I bet. Can you predict what
Mhm.
I'm going to say? Because, like, we
I
do know each other pretty well. Oh, maybe not. Okay.
No, I have no idea.
Okay. Well, it's about teacher self regulation. And it's about, you were saying to listen to the conversations in the classroom very carefully and see what the tone of the conversations are and stepping back and being mindful about that. And there's a lot of beautiful. There is. Be mindful about what you're bringing forward because I've talked about this in, I think, Connections Before Curriculum, or about whose voice is the one that is constantly chirping up. And if you really listen to what's going on in the classroom, if all of your energy is going, shh, stop, please stop talking. And you're constantly interrupting because of a couple soft voices in the corner or whatever it may be, you will quickly
Yes.
realize that you are the preventer of the settle. And that it connects back to the one I said before, because if you just kind of let it simmer down on its own and your voice doesn't add to the cacophony, it does happen, right? And so
Yes.
just watch your own contribution to the noise and watch your own voice level when you're teaching. Like, I know that my voice is really, really loud. Um, when I bring it down to a softer voice, the class is more inclined to match my tone and my level. So it's something to think about. I have a story. You want to hear it?
Yeah, I want to hear it. And then I just want to say how amazing this is because my next point is just exactly related to that. And I have a couple people I want to bring up when it comes to having that patience and really bringing that calm, beautiful energy into the classroom. So tell
I
me
want to
yours.
see if I can guess. Okay. So I was at this really cool event, and an amazing colleague of ours was winning an award. And this was through our association, Chelsea. She was winning an award um, for her work in human rights. And the room was like a classroom to some degree. People were having conversations, and it was good conversation, but it was time for this person to start talking, and there was too much background noise. There really was. And other people had gone up and spoken at the mic, but that background noise still existed. Now, this was during a dinner, so that was not completely abnormal, okay? But it wasn't the
Yeah.
appropriate noise level, let's say, okay? She, instead of building her voice to grab attention, brought her voice down to the calmest, zenest, softest tone and pace, no rush. And the room quieted in a way that was just phenomenal. It was a master class for me because she used the exact opposite tactic that I would use with my voice. And every once in a while, I remember her and how she did it. And I try to embody her. Like I try to be her in a moment, and I do that voice. And well, it doesn't work as well. I just don't have it. What can I say?
I know, me neither.
But I try. But it was beautiful. And it just, we praise loud sometimes. We praise confidence. We don't always praise self-assured, calm, confident, and softer. And this was the most effective thing that I'd seen. It was amazing. That's my
Yes,
story.
that's it. That's my story too. I would say tap into your patience. I don't think I have enough patience when it comes to waiting in the class. All right. So I am going to bring up Mr. Peter Cameron, who, of
Oh,
course, has been on the show. He
yes,
was
he
on our
has.
show for episode 30, Diving into Empowerment. And when Peter speaks in front of an audience, he will wait and stand patiently. And it does not take long for the audience to figure out that it's time to listen. And, he's just a relaxed look on his face. He looks around a little bit. And next thing you know, you can hear a pin drop in the room.
So for people who can't see Chelsea, she is actually mimicking, not in a mean way, Peter's facial expression. And she gently touched her face and kind of like put her hand like a chin strap across her chin. And that is something that he does while he's waiting. Like he's
Yes.
thinking deeply, of course.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
it's awesome. And I vow to do that one day. Although you and I don't feel like we have the voice, we're going to get there. We are going to do this, okay? And I've also seen this done actually with my grade 8 teacher. In thinking about that, I was kind of making the assumption that, oh, this happens in, those really seasoned teachers who've been doing this for a really long time. Although when this person was teaching me in grade 8, couldn't have been that seasoned, right? And that's
Right.
not the case. It's not the case. Anyone can do this. I once came into a class. I know it's like, do I have a classroom or do I just wander around the school? I once came into a class where there was another occasional teacher in a room, doesn't even know the students. And this was a very young occasional teacher. Again, the energy was amazing. Calm, controlled, speaking in this voice that is like mesmerizing. I was like, oh, I just want to sit in here. This is just, it is, like you said, it's just Zen. So it is something we can all do, but it does take that patience and almost that trust, like trust in the students, but also trust in yourself. That's what I think.
Well, you're hitting the nail on the head here. I mean, the more you can access those moments, I mean, the more effective you are and the more engagement that you have, it takes that level of confidence. The reality is I mean, I love those days in teaching where the narrative and the story of it all just flows out of me and is attached to the curriculum. Like I'm able to weave the story into the curriculum and bring it all together and it all just fits and you're on and it's amazing. And then there's other days where you almost can't activate that within you and you're floundering in front of the class.
Yes.
You might have a strong voice, but like you're not hitting, they're not picking up what you put down. So that's the opposite. And that's why that's really why it's so important to take care of yourself so that you're able to access those finer moments more often. Like if you're off and you're exhausted or you're hungry, or you're really thinking about something else, it's hard to stand in front of people and fake it to that degree. And I just want
Yeah.
to throw out one more thing that Peter does that's really made me reflect. And I'm a fast talker. And I remember when we first started the podcast, my mom was like, you need to slow down. Like you're talking way too fast. Well, thanks, Mom. It's already been released, but okay. Um, but Peter speaks at a pace that shows the importance of his message. Okay. And the add on to that is we don't all process information super fast. Sometimes you go slower, you are putting a punctuation mark on the importance, of the message and the fact that it is important that people are listening to it. They need to hear it. And you're also allowing people time to process the message. So, I mean, I've learned a lot listening to the different teachers in our school and the different beautiful styles that exist. And what it does is it's an instructor to me when I'm teaching or when I'm interacting with students. I remember how I saw, let's say, someone gently redirect in a way that I never would have thought. And I will try to add that to my toolkit. And I mean, here's the hope is that this conversation, chatty conversation, no one's taming our chat today. This conversation maybe makes someone think about something a little bit differently.
You're absolutely right. Now, the last point is to lean into project-based learning and collaborative learning because this is your chance to do it with a group like this. Another great option is roundtable discussions. We will do another episode on this and really break it down because I'm super into roundtable discussions right now. But the gist of it is that students are sitting around the perimeter of the desks, and then you have a discussion about whatever you want, topics from them, topics that you have created as a teacher. And all I can say is that after doing roundtable discussions, first of all, there's a lot of teaching throughout and a lot of those mini lessons on addressing how we're speaking to each other. But after doing this, I have students excitedly asking me when the next roundtable discussion is. And it's something that you can really pull a lot of learning and assessment out of. So it's a great option to try.
I love that you're having roundtable discussions. And I know students, it's their favorite moments where they look at the clock and they realize they were able to do 50 minutes of conversing and they think that they're getting away with not doing work. And yet I think conversations at this point in education are the very best moments that work is done. And because we communicate now in not face to face and so much via text, those rich interactions build community. We say that all the time, but it's true. They build community, they build connection, they build a student's ability to, on the spot, be able to interact and have a conversation. And that is more and more a skill that is lost. Public education is super important. I love that we give these kids these beautiful conversation opportunities.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, they think that they're pulling the wool over my eyes. Oh, we can just
Yeah.
talk the whole period. Well, you know what? Sometimes we can because it's good learning.
It's really good learning. It's my
It
favorite.
is.
I want you to consider that it's very possible that some of those conversations, whether they're round table, small group, one-on-one, that we have with our classroom communities are filling the wells of our students. And I strongly believe that there's not enough face-to-face time whereby we're sharing our ideas and opinions respectfully and getting excited about new ideas. So don't forget that while this conversation fills our well, those moments that students are having with each other, some of which drive us a little bit up the wall, and other ones that, are very enjoyable, those conversations are filling the students' wells too.
You cannot go wrong with human connection.
Well, on that note, I think it's time for the takeaways.
Well, I would have to agree. Let's do it.
Let's pull those takeaways right out of the well.
Takeaway number 1, observe the type of chatter and decide how to begin embracing the challenge.
Number 2, begin classes with bell ringers or mindfulness activities and don't hesitate to add a challenge to keep students engaged.
Number 3, try being grateful for the group you have. Use it to your advantage.
Number 4, tap into your patience and your own tone of voice. Taming the talk takes time and adjustments.
Oh, I really like how you toned your voice down there. That was really nice. Good job.
Thank you. Thank you.
And number 5, lean into project-based learning and collaborative activities to channel your chatty classes energy in a productive way.
Thanks for listening to the EduWell podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, please share it with a friend, subscribe, and leave a positive review. It helps others to find us.
Follow us on Instagram and Pinterest to help spread the word. For more inspiration, tips, and book recommendations, just head to the show notes and join the EduWell newsletter today. Until next time, be well
and do well.